Hello everyone, my name is Jade and I am the Head of Engineering for Canva's editing experience.
And my name is Dave, Distinguished Engineer at Canva.
So thank you all so much for joining us in this session about the power of platform. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the forces that have helped shape the Canva APIs. And for us at Canva, the Canva APIs are a driving force behind our own success in delivering product innovations. They are a distillation of the complexity and the power of Canva's design editor, made accessible through clear APIs for all of our teams at Canva to use. And then we share that same platform with all of you here today. So one of the philosophies that Canva engineering really champions is the idea of building it once and shipping it everywhere, to every country, to every device, and to every customer. It's a simple philosophy, but it means we confront a series of different challenges while also working to deliver. An example of this is how do we grow and scale our teams and technology. Many of you might assume that Canva has many different editors. One that does video editing, one that does print products, one that does presentations or document writing. And you can see a challenge emerging that if you want to launch a new feature, you've got to build it many different times. And aligning that many different teams and decision makers can be incredibly complicated and often a slow process. So instead, we follow a unified editor vision. One powerful platform with every ingredient that you need to design anything and then make it available to all of our Canva teams through the Canva API. This kind of API design is done in a way to represent all the technology and capabilities that we have available in the editor, and they can then be remixed into different experiences. So we've distilled each of these different ways to design into common fundamental ingredients, pages and elements that are made up of shapes, lines, text, and time. And by remixing these ingredients, you can then build large new editing experiences and editing features, and then deploy them all across the Canva work suite. And this is so advantageous because tech moves quickly. By having a powerful platform, it allows us to stay at the forefront of our customers' needs and respond to the changing tech landscape and help unlock us every kind of designing possible. But staying unified in that vision is a challenge, particularly as our team and our company continues to grow. When there are 3 people, there are 3 lines of communication in a team. At 14, there are 91. And I think at Canva, we're now hitting about 2,000 engineers. So there's over 2 million lines of connection all across our teams. So as we grow, the complexity of decision-making and communication channels grows exponentially. And this is why it's so important that any updates and changes to the editing platform are communicated effectively. It's a pivotal moment to maintaining a cohesive vision for the editor, and our Canva APIs are such an effective way for us to keep everyone aligned. And they serve as a self-documenting mechanism to provide all the capabilities and changes that roll out across the Canva editor for our teams. So by using Canva APIs internally, it's allowed us to, for all of our teams to access those editor capabilities without having to reinvent the wheel. Once an individual has built a feature once, it's then available across the whole product and used by 20 million users every single day, editing 50 million designs all across the globe. Dave, maybe we can dive into how we do this.
Mm-hmm. Now that Jade has given you a broad understanding of the driving forces behind our internal APIs, I'd like to talk about the principles that we apply to the APIs that we design. Because when you combine the forces that Jade talked about with the principles that we're about to talk about, then our APIs are what pop out the other side. Our 3 most important principles that we apply to our API design are 1, reliability, 2, simplicity, and 3, power. These 3 principles shape the Canva platform at its very foundation. When you build on Canva, you can trust that these 3 principles will apply. We're now going to describe what we mean by these 3 principles in a bit more detail, and then I'm going to contextualize them in terms of an exciting new capability of the Apps SDK v2. First, reliability. Reliability is our #1 priority. What do I mean by reliability? Well, I'll explain through an example. When we run an app in the editor, we run it in an iframe. That means that the app runtime and the editor runtime are isolated from each other. All interaction between an app and the editor occurs through exchanging messages via post message. This browser isolation gives us security, and that means that we can trust that an app can't crash the editor, and you can trust that the editor nor any other app can crash your app.
The next thing we strive for is simplicity. But what do we mean by simplicity? The origin of the word simple is from the Latin simplis, meaning to have one ingredient. So by simple, we really embrace solutions that have a sense of oneness, having one way of doing things, one mechanism that only does one thing, or a system that only needs one moving part, or a definition that has no ifs or no buts. So an example of this is an app element, which is an element controlled by an app that holds both data and Canva elements. They are configured with one definition. That definition includes one render function, just like a React component, and the state of an app element is determined entirely by its data via that function. The data is a single source of truth.
And lastly, power. Within the limits of reliability and simplicity, we try and give our APIs as much power as possible. So for example, by running an app in an iframe, an app can enjoy the full expressive power of the JavaScript language. That includes asynchronous computation and network interactions. Another example is that the content that an app element produces is composed out of simple, powerful primitives, such as shape elements, which is what we call SVGs. Shape elements have the full power of the SVG path command language. Text elements, which have the full power of Canva's font support, because text means stylized text. Also images and videos, as well as groups over these primitives. Another example of power is that in its control panel, an app has the full power of React to build a rich and expressive app and UI experience. And the last example, the Apps SDK includes in it a UI kit of basic UI primitives and UI components, such as buttons, forms, and layouts. And these are the same UI kit primitives that we use on Canva.com in the editor itself and on our homepage and other pages. So using these simple ingredients and powerful ingredients and combining them in different ways, there is a lot that you can do with an app. So those are our 3 main principles: simplicity, reliability, and power. And I'd now like to talk about a new capability that we're building into the Apps SDK v2. And I'm very excited to talk about it with you all today. Now, this is not a feature that you call into the Apps SDK. Rather, it's a property of how the Apps SDK has been put together. And this feature is transactions. Transactions are a very neat demonstration of the 3 principles of reliability, simplicity, and power, all coming together in practice. But before introducing what we mean by transactions, I need to describe the app's architecture in a bit more detail and one of the shortcomings that it has had until today. In a nutshell, an app in the editor is something that produces or manages some content in a design. When an app is activated, it has a control panel that runs in an iframe. The editor sends events to the app, and the app sends content back to the editor. And that's pretty much it. Wait, that was it. This architecture is reliable. The iframes provide isolated runtimes. It's simple. Events flow one way, and content flows the other way. And it's powerful. Content here means any composition of those powerful primitives that I described earlier. However, this architecture proved to be a little bit too simple, and that's because content only flows one way. For the design editing and content query APIs that we're releasing with Apps SDK v2, we needed content to flow 2 ways. Now that should be easy enough. Ta-da, done. Yeah, if only it was that easy. So this is a picture of data flow, how data flows between the app and in the editor. But if we look at control flow instead, then we'll see some of the challenges of two-way flow of content start to emerge. Since an app and the editor run in separate iframes, the communication between an app and the editor is all asynchronous. So an app asks for some content from the editor, such as the content of a user's selection or the elements on the visible page. The editor then sends that content over to the app, and then an app can get to work on that content, perhaps summarizing the text, perhaps rearranging the geometry of the layout, maybe normalizing the color palette. When the app is done, it then sends that content back to the editor to be replaced. Now this is all well and good if the user doesn't do anything in the meantime. But in Canva, everything is live and collaborative. Not only might the user still be editing, other users might be editing at the same time, other apps might be running at the same time. So what happens when there are edits that are coming from the editor as well as from the app? This two-way flow of content has created a challenge. How do we merge these edits together? The Canva platform already knows how to do this when resolving simultaneous edits from multiple users. Jade, how about we run through a concrete example?
Yeah, sure thing, Dave. Okay, everyone, I would love for you to meet Alice and Bob. Alice and Bob both love cats and coffee. Let's be honest, who doesn't? And so they decide to open a cat cafe together called The Perfect Brew. While working on their logo design together in Canva, each of them wants to make an edit. Alice decides that perfect doesn't have enough R's, so they want to add another. And Bob thinks that the play of words isn't obvious enough, so they're going to highlight those characters in per with a color change. As Alice adds that R and Bob changes the colors, when Alice's changes reach Bob's editor and Bob's changes reaches Alice's editor, if we're not careful, they could end up seeing very different things. And there it is. Unfortunately, Alice's editor has applied Bob's change, making the per brown, and Bob's editor has applied Alice's change, adding that extra R, but the R's are now different colors in these different editors. So Dave, how does the Canva platform actually prevent this from happening?
The way the Canva platform works is that whenever a user has a design open in their editor, there's a copy of that design open on one of Canva's servers. Everyone editing that design in their own editors is connected to that copy. All the edits made by each user are sent to that master copy and they're synchronized. So while Alice and Bob are each working in their own editor, all of their edits are being synced with this master copy in real time. So in this example, Alice's editor has made a change to add an R at position 4. That gets sent off to Canva servers. Bob's editor makes a different change to recolor the first 4 characters, P-U-R-R, to recolor them brown. Bob's editor sends that off to Canva servers. As these edits flow past each other, we apply clever algorithms that detect the conflict between these edits, and we can change those edits to automatically resolve those conflicts. So in this case, there's a conflict. Alice's edit is adding a character in the same range that Bob's edit is reformatting. So the way we resolve this is we pass Alice's edit through unmodified to add the R, but we pass Bob's edit to Alice's editor in a slightly transformed way to add one more character to the range, making it a bit broader. In this way, Alice and Bob thus end up converging to exactly the same content with both of their edits being preserved, despite their original edits being in conflict. Now, this conflict resolution capability is one that not many online platforms have. And today, we are bringing this conflict resolution capability to apps through the power of transactions. So what does that look like to an app? How does an app utilize transactions? It comes for free. So here's an example of an app that might perform some snap-to-grid alignment of the geometry in a design, perhaps using an AI model. In code, that might look something like this, using the new design editing API. The transaction starts by calling OpenDesign over some scope, such as the current page. Inside the transaction, an app can read and write design content, such as element geometry. And all of this manipulation occurs within an isolated copy of the design. Nothing else is going to be manipulating this copy. The app has full control over it. While the app is running, however, the user, as well as other apps, are free to continue modifying the design in the editor. An app completes a transaction by calling save. If an app returns without calling save or doesn't call save within a particular time limit, then all of the edits get thrown away. None of the edits get saved. So either all of the edits apply or none of the edits apply. So in this way, we say that the transaction is atomic, as well as being isolated from the previous slide. Now, normally transactions are described in terms of 4 properties, particularly database transactions. So there's 2 more properties, consistency and durability. In the context of the editor, transactions are just as consistent and durable as any other editing action performed by a user, which is about as much sense as it makes for them to be. Lastly, transactions are asynchronous. So here is a bigger example of an app that rearranges the layout of a page using a complex asynchronous layout algorithm, perhaps utilizing an AI model. The key thing to notice here is that inside the transaction block, an app can leverage async and await in JavaScript. That means that an app can take a little while to do its manipulation, but not too long. And that's okay because it's being run on in an isolated context with an isolated copy of the design. When the transaction gets committed, the edits made by the app during that transaction get transformed against any other edits made by the user or made by other apps in the meantime, just like the edits from Alice and Bob that we saw earlier. So that's a summary of transactions. Transactions are reliable, simple, and powerful. They are the underlying mechanism behind our design editing and content query APIs, and they empower apps to read and write design content easily and transparently, leveraging the conflict resolution capabilities of the Canva platform. And transactions are just one example of our 3 API principles coming together in practice, principles that speak to the power of the Canva platform.
I couldn't agree more, Dave. So a platform that offers our developers reliability, simplicity, and power is a crucial investment for us at Canva. It enables us to continue growing and scaling our teams while also providing impactful product changes to our customers. And as engineering leaders, we care very deeply about the developer experience for our teams and all of you. We want to make it easier and simpler for everyone to turn ideas into reality. So I know that we have a lot of exciting products in the pipeline coming soon to a Canva editor near you, and that will continue to further expand the capabilities that are available in our Canva APIs. We cannot wait to share the power of the platform with all of you very soon. Thank you.